Welcome to Epoch News. I'm Tatiana Darzi. A tenant in the residential building in Harbin was confirmed to have contracted the CCP virus. After identifying the infected tenant, local authorities decided to lock down the entire building. These are the measures used in Wuhan by authorities under the Chinese regime. And now they're using the same tactics in Harbin, which has now become the new epicenter of the virus.
In a Harbin apartment building, a confirmed case was identified in the building. And as a result, all of the residents were locked in by local authorities.
3号楼金城小区，看着没有？本单元有封条，大锁头已经封上了，啊。
哎，这个是确诊病例。
人也不用下来了，也上不，人也上不去，人也上不去，也下不来。 哎呀，哎呀，封没封？你说，姐姐封没封？你说，看看，我大姐都带空包箍呢。
After using extreme measures to contain the CCP virus in Wuhan, the world witnessed abuse against humanity, the loss of lives, and the failure of lockdown policies. Recently, the new virus epicenter Harbin, a city northeast of China, is now following in Wuhan's footprints by locking down the city.
The Chinese regime has been covering up and underreporting the amount of infected cases of the CCP virus in Harbin, and there's evidence to show for it. Harbin has been hit hard with the virus, and according to models, it's estimated that the real number of confirmed virus cases might be up to 200 times higher than the number officially published by the regime.
The Epoch Times revealed a report dated April 10th on the statistics of people from Daiwai district of Harbin City who tested positive via serology tests. The statistics showed that the CDC in that district reported 34 cases of positive tests that day. However, the local government reported only one additional confirmed case, amounting to a total of 2 confirmed cases and 4 asymptomatic infected cases. There are 18 districts and counties in Harbin City, and if the virus infection grows in proportion to the population, there should have been around 467 people infected by the CCP virus, 14 times higher than the 34 confirmed cases in Daiwai district, and 233 times more than the data published by the Chinese Communist Party.
I don't watch state-run media, but I know from online influencers that there are possibly 182 epidemic centers around Harbin City. These are dangerous places, and I feel extremely scared because I live very close to these dangerous places.
A factory owner from Harbin City, Mr. Kong, indicated that many stores and factories are closed down because there are no sales and owners are still required to pay rent during the pandemic, and the government has no economic relief plan for them.
The pandemic here is severe. My factory is closed for 3 months now, and just when I was about to reopen the factory, the epidemic came back again. I have lost so much money since the factory is rented and the workers are not working. There are some factories that cannot even afford the rent and therefore closed down, especially the factories that deal with international orders.
On the afternoon of April 20th, a man committed suicide by jumping down from Harbin Provincial Hospital. According to the police, they found the man's will in his cell phone. In the will, he stated that he's been having fevers for 10 years, and there was no cure for it. He wanted to commit suicide as a result of this, not because of the CCP virus. People online believe that the will was fabricated by the police, for this incident is absurd and beyond ridiculous. Citizens from Harbin City expressed that the financial burden has increased a lot during the pandemic, and the entrances of many communities with confirmed cases are blocked. The government has no moral values, and such inhumane actions have led to mental breakdowns.
This CCP virus is so stressful to us, the ordinary people, that we feel like having a mountain on top of us. In my memories, the prices for the vegetables have never been this high, and the wages for workers in 3 northeastern provinces are very low. When a public health crisis like this happens, all costs for testing, quarantine, and treatments should be covered by the government, not paid by the citizens. So it is just normal to see people committing suicide because they have no way of continuing their lives.
Moreover, the statistics report from Dawei District did not show any cases of asymptomatic infections, raising many suspicions.
In Huanggang, a man pained for losing his mother to the CCP virus pandemic wants to sue the Chinese regime for its lack of transparency and for misleading the public about the severity of the virus. He feels that people in China have been fooled by the regime, and now he wants to hold the regime accountable for its lies and negligence.
Lian is a Hubei native. His mother died of the CCP virus infection, and his father also passed away soon after. The pain of losing parents to the pandemic was simply unbearable. On top of the pain, he also worried his brother might be a victim of censorship.
Were you expressing that you're in need of legal support?
I am not seeking compensation. I just want an explanation. My parents had lived in the nursing home for 4 years. Her diabetes and high blood pressure had been well controlled, but then she died in the hospital, and we don't even know how she contracted the virus.
Were you misled by the claim of no human transmission?
On the one hand, I thought it only happened in Wuhan, which has nothing to do with us. We are in Huanggang. On the other hand, the government had misled us by downplaying the severity of the disease. I told my mom what I saw and read from the internet. I wanted her to be careful. But at the government level, they didn't mention anything about the outbreak. We had been completely fooled by the regime.
I see. Your mom died of the outbreak, but you felt the government should be held accountable for her death.
I strongly feel that the world is at its worst in terms of darkness and cruelty. Even the sunshine feels so pale and bitter. It's totally dark. The slogan of the China dream is deceitful. The regime has deprived our right to know. We were lied to about the reality of Wuhan. It's extremely evil to deny our request to see my mother for the last time during her final moments. My brother was in Shenzhen. To return, he would need his local district governor to sign a travel document. He was the only person from the area to make it back here because all trains had stopped the operation midway. He was praying on the highway to finally see a vehicle driving by to give him a ride to come back home, but in the end, all he saw was my mom's coffin.
When was this happening?
From February 5th to the 22nd, my mom was suspected to have contracted the infection on the 4th and tested positive on the 5th. She was transferred to a designated hospital. Seriously, this regime is like a rotten apple about to be discarded. It's so bad.
You want to sue the regime, right?
Yes, I can send you my mom's death certificate. It stated clearly the cause, the novel coronavirus. I want to sue the regime. They must pay for this bloody debt. This regime must be overthrown. It has made everyone live under lies. Nothing is real. I don't understand why this regime would create such a virus. I am so lost. I just feel that you and I both live under the same sky, but our worlds are so different. They are absolutely different. I don't understand why the world would allow this regime to get this big and even feed this regime with all the trades. It's like doing business with the mob. I'm very much worried for my brother. I fear he might be subject to the regime's persecution. I'm very nervous for him, even though he's a quiet person. But the regime is watching you and everywhere. Even my phone would constantly receive messages from China Mobile, such as alert or warning of overseas phone numbers. I know for a fact that our cell phone, QQ messaging, and WeChat accounts are all being monitored.
The interview was conducted on April 6 by Yi Ling of the Chinese language Epoch Times.
Canada's former Minister of Justice, Irwin Cotler, stated that the CCP should be held accountable for the pandemic. He suggested targeting the people responsible for the disappearances of whistleblower doctors who tried to warn of the severity of the emerging CCP virus.
Irwin Cotler, former Canadian Minister of Justice and a leading international champion of human rights, said the Chinese Communist Party should be held responsible for the global pandemic caused by the CCP virus, formerly known as COVID-19.
With respect to the pandemic, the least we can do is hold accountable those responsible for having imprisoned, disappeared, and falsified the information regarding the pandemic, and to hold them accountable through Magnitsky-like sanctions and the like.
The Sergei Magnitsky Law allows Canada to freeze assets and place travel bans on human rights violators from around the world. Dr. Irwin had alerted her colleagues at Wuhan Central Hospital that a SARS-like virus had reappeared among her patients. 8 doctors then shared the information with their networks on social media, but were soon summoned, reprimanded, and silenced by local police. Among them, Dr. Li Wenliang was forced to sign a letter saying he had spread fake speech and disturbed social order. A study published on January 24th in the medical journal The Lancet showed that on December 1st, a patient had become ill with the CCP virus. Dr. Li Wenliang was silenced by the police on January 3rd. Chinese authorities finally admitted on January 20th that the CCP virus is transmissible from person to person. This was more than 6 weeks after the first case was identified. The suppression of whistleblowers revealing the truth has never stopped. More recently, Dr. Irwin has been unreachable since March 29th, and the Chinese authorities continue to cover up the real scale of the outbreak.
So if the truth could have come out in December, as some scientific publications and others have shown, 95% of this pandemic, which has engulfed the world, could have been prevented. And that's a human tragedy. What we've been witnessing has been an ongoing state-sanctioned culture of corruption and criminality and even impunity, which has underpinned it, in that the international community has not, regrettably, held the Chinese leadership accountable. I'm speaking before the pandemic.
Several international government leaders in Britain, France, and Australia are demanding answers about the origin of the CCP virus. The pandemic has already caused great economic hardship and pain to people worldwide. In just 2 months, the situation has forced countries to reevaluate their relationships with China and seek to hold the Chinese regime accountable for how it mishandled the outbreak.
British Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs Dominic Raab expressed to the journalist who asked him about the relationship between Britain and China on April 16th that the Chinese government has the responsibility to explain the outbreak of the virus.
I think there absolutely needs to be a very, very deep dive after the event, a review of the lessons, including of the outbreak of the virus, and I don't think we can flinch from that at all. But there's no doubt we can't have business as usual after this crisis, and we'll have to ask the hard questions about how it came about and how it couldn't have been stopped earlier.
Presently, many members of the British government, the Conservative Party, are now asking for a re-evaluation on the relationship with China and holding Beijing accountable for the pandemic. In the interview with the Financial Times, President Macron of France was asked if the Chinese authoritarian system is better than the capacity of Western democratic governments when it comes to handling the virus, and he replied that it is naive to think that way. He further expressed,
"It is extremely obvious that the level of transparency and of freedom are different. There is no free access to the internet and to social media in China, and we have no idea what actually happened there. We cannot naively think that the Chinese government is going to better handle the pandemic because, evidently, something happened there and we don't know what it was."
The death toll of the CCP virus in France increased to 18,000 on April 16th, and the virus is still spreading rapidly in the country. Moreover, the Minister for Home Affairs of Australia, Peter Dutton, who has fully recovered from the CCP virus, expressed in the interview with Sky News and Channel 9 that the Chinese Communist regime has the responsibility to explain the origin of the virus. He believes that all countries around the world will change their attitude towards China and adjust the ways in which they interact with China as soon as the USA launches an investigation on the origin of the CCP virus. Heng He, a commentator on current affairs, said,
"In many countries, leaders feel obligated to investigate the cause of this catastrophe because they need to be responsible to their voters and also to prevent the same disaster from happening again. These governments are showing the public where they stand now before the U.S. government reveals the results of the investigation. These governments do not want to act in a passive way regarding this pandemic, and this is the bottom line of the democratic governments, which is totally different from the Chinese Communist Party."
During yesterday's press briefing with the Coronavirus Task Force, President Trump began his speech updating the press about progress in declining and flattening the curve for the CCP virus cases around the country. He also mentioned that Americans are starting to get ready to safely reopen the country.
A lot of tremendous things are happening. The number of new positive cases continue to decline nationwide. Recent hotspots appear to be stabilizing. The hotspots are, in some cases, very interesting what's going on, and they're going down. They're going in the right direction. Cases in the Boston area are now declining. The Chicago curve appears to have flattened, which is terrific, and Detroit has passed its peak. These trends demonstrate that our aggressive strategy to battle the virus is working, and that more states will soon be in a position to gradually and safely reopen. That's very exciting. It was very exciting even today watching and seeing what's happening, and people are getting ready and they're all excited.
He went on to say that hundreds of thousands of ventilators are being produced in the U.S. The president spoke to leaders from other countries, and they found it incredible that Trump and the Coronavirus Task Force solved the ventilator problem.
You know, at the one time, all they talked about was ventilators, because you didn't think it was possible for me to solve that problem. And I solved it, and nobody can believe it. I just spoke to world leaders today who desperately need ventilators. They said, the job you've done, and we're sending 500 to Mexico, then another 500 to France. We're sending some to Spain. We're sending some to Italy. We have them. They're being made by the thousands. And world leaders, I spoke to Prime Minister. I went through a lot of different calls today. I won't even tell you. But I can give you a list if you want. But I went through a lot of calls to a lot of leaders. Spoke with Pakistan. They would like to have some ventilators. We're going to get them some ventilators. But they all said to me one thing: it was incredible that you solved the ventilator problem, because that was a big problem.
The following charts will show you the most recent numbers regarding the CCP virus pandemic. However, China and Iran are not included because their numbers are unverifiable. That's all for today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this program with friends and family to keep them informed about the latest news and updates. Thank you for joining me. See you next time.